GrowCFO is where finance leaders grow together. Join thousands of like-minded professionals using GrowCFO to access the combined knowledge and experience of the finance leader community. You can join us today, growcfo.net.
Hello and welcome to the GrowCFO show. I've got a returning guest today who's just published her latest book and has a revelation to us. Susana Serrano Davey, CFO of a mango farm.
Hello, Kevin. How do you get from a CFO to a mango farmer? Perhaps we'll get to talk a little bit about today. But first of all, it's lovely to be here again. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to discuss the topic of my new book.
Now, your new book, Confidence is Overrated. Now, we recorded a podcast many moons ago called Confidence is Overrated.
Indeed.
I guess there's no coincidence there.
No, and I have to be very grateful to you because I think I landed on that podcast with you on the key idea that I wanted to explore deeply for this book. Because before we recorded the podcast, I had been playing around with different topics without really finding what is that thing that I think I want to talk about as a single topic, as a single subject. So you helped me in that journey. So you have something to do with this book that is being born now.
Brilliant, brilliant. So tell me more about that central concept. What's the book trying to get across?
So the book, the main concept has to do with the fact that confidence is something that we're often told that we need to achieve things in life. I mean, how many things have you not done because you thought, that's not for me, or I couldn't do it? Or many of us really don't go to certain places because we feel we're not confident enough. And what's more important, sometimes we feel really rubbishy along our journeys if we don't feel that confidence. We've all had difficult moments of feeling imposter syndrome and all of these things that make us insecure. And my point is that we spend our life looking for filling that void, for building those accolades to feel confident so that we can go on and say, yeah, I can do that. And that's all in part is good. But I don't think is the right route, because you can achieve many things, have many medals, and still feel uncomfortable within you. And therefore, what I think is really important is to say, get confidence. It's overrated. I'm just going to get on with life like I have done and you have done. And over time, I will connect with my inner confidence, not through something rational, but more through a knowledge that it's okay to be who you are. It's okay to have the situation you have, and you can become almost like your companion on your life journey, so that when you do have those moments of doubt, which we all have moments of doubt, we're kind to ourselves and we get through that.
So, Susana, is this about saying, now, what do I want to do? Shall I just get on and do it anyway, even if I don't have confidence in my ability to do it? How much is getting on and doing it versus having some skills to do whatever it is important?
How can you learn the skills if you don't have a go? How can you, we can go into a number of areas in this discussion, but alluding to what you've just talked about is sometimes our search for perfectionism and wanting to do everything perfectly that prevents us from just having a go at something. And unless we're willing to fail, unless we're willing to produce a poor book or to do a bad job, we can't get better at things. And we can't find that acceptance into, actually, that may not have been the best piece of work that I have done in my life, but I'm okay with that because I'm on a journey. And I think what's important is that journey that we go on. And I'll use an analogy that I think you may smile about, that we've discussed briefly before, which is to do with mushrooms. And for most people are afraid of mushrooms and they think, oh, I'm not going to go anywhere near them. But with mushrooms, I've been lucky in the last few years to be with someone that knows how to collect them. So we go out in the countryside and it's such fun, Kevin. You can't imagine the fun that it is. Going for a walk and thinking, I saw one, because also they hide. Did you know mushrooms hide? They hide under the leaves. So anyway, the thing is with mushrooms is you can't say, I'm going to the countryside to collect mushrooms. You may not find them. What you can do is say, okay, I know it's rained recently. I know it's not too cold. The conditions are about right. So I'm going to go off for my walk. And if you're lucky, you'll find your mushroom. It'll be great. But the whole point is that you have to focus on the conditions and going for that walk. And if you find the mushroom, great. But I think many of us will not go out for that walk because they think, oh, finding the mushroom is just too difficult. I'm never going to find it. And there's another analogy that I use in the book. I'm going to show you. So those who listen may not see it, but you'll have to look. This is an analogy that I think is super sweet that I've used in my book. What is this, Kevin, that I'm showing to you?
It looks rather like a horse that's gone wrong, Susana. Unicorn.
Exactly. Well done, Kevin. I've used in the book the analogy, I love metaphors. So one of the ones that I've used is the analogy of a unicorn, because people think of unicorns, they are beautiful, no? They're supposed to be very magical and something very special, but impossible to find. And my idea is that confidence is a bit like that. We think it's something we can never feel all the time, or we think it's just unattainable to feel confident all the time. But in fact, as you go through life, you do cross paths with that unicorn every once in a while. And when you connect with that, with your inner unicorn, there is something very beautiful that happens. That is, you feel better in your own skin. And when you feel better in your own skin, even with your failures, even with your faults, then I think you are beyond confidence. You don't need confidence because you are content, you are happy. And in fact, in my book, I discuss my failures more than my successes to illustrate my point.
Now, how much of this book, then, Susana, is an autobiography?
About 50%, because the readers told me from my first book that the part that they enjoyed the most was the personal stories I use to make my point, to make examples and so on. So this book has 2 timelines. One started when I was about 14, and some of the many disasters that I've had in my life, and some successes as well. And the other one, they cross each other. So every chapter has a story and also a main chapter part where I go on to talk about different aspects that I think are important to consider when looking at your confidence, starting from understanding your own behaviors and whether you do suffer from imposter syndrome and how does that manifest. You and I have talked about this in the podcast before. And then moving on to thinking about, okay, what are the things that create that lack of confidence? Things like fear, things like beliefs, regrets, and looking at those deeply to effectively make a conscious decision as to whether you want them to continue to be driving your actions. And then many other parts that really bring you on a journey from you in parallel to me when I was my young self, very insecure and dropping out of school, as I remember I told you once in one of our podcasts. And there was another event in my life, early life, that was very traumatic, and I share. So from that person that was very insecure to the happy lady smiling to you here today, there's been a long journey. And through that journey, I hope others will reflect on their own and think, yes, perhaps I might decide to stop trying so hard to feel confident and trying to put almost like a costume or a shell and start living life.
Start living life. Now, there's an interesting idea. I'm seeing that coming very much in what you're up to at the moment. And I believe you just bought a new property along
Yes.
the mango farm.
Yes, it is it's 6,000 meters worth of land in the island of El Hierro, which is beautiful. And, the El Hierro, if you haven't heard about it, that's a good thing. Because one of the beautiful things about it is that not many people know it and not many people go. You have to take 2 planes to get there, minimum. And it's about 1,400 kilometers from where I'm sitting right now, from my other home. And this project has been born out of, and why not? I often use this question when I work with people, and I use it in my book, because I think quite often we put the barriers before engaging in things and allowing ourselves to go on that journey. And if you ask at the beginning, why not buy a mango farm? If it came across as an opportunity in life and it felt right, why not?
But what do you actually know about mango farming?
Zero, zilch. No. Well, now I've done a little bit of research on Google. And ChatGTP is wonderful. It has been giving me advice about when to prune the mangoes. And so ChatGTP will be my companion through part of this journey, believe it or not.
So is there something in here, Susanna, that says, ask yourself what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yes. And more, I think one of the things that is important is to say, even what's the worst thing that can happen? And acknowledging that many of the time, and I talk about this when I speak about the fear part of journey, many of the fears that we have are made up. The worst thing that can happen, that we think can happen, is usually an illusion, it's an exaggeration, it's the worst case scenario that is not likely to happen. So challenging that worst case scenario, it's a part of finding your unicorn, finding your inner confidence. But the other part, I think, as well, has to do with even if it does go wrong, because in my book, I tell a lot of tales of when it does go wrong. It's okay because life goes on and you evolve and things never pan out as you think they're going to pan out. But they're okay because you continue to evolve on your life journey. I never thought I'd be here talking to you. Even 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when I first met you, I hadn't started writing my first book. I wouldn't have thought I'm going to be talking to Kevin about publishing my second book. But hey, here I am. If I had waited to have all the skills and feel confident, I wouldn't have done it.
Mm.
And the mango farm is the same. Just why not?
Well, I suppose I can think back on certain things that have been the same. And here I am talking to you on episode, 200 and whatever it is of the GrowCFO show. And also interviewed you on episode 456 of the Next 100 Days podcast. And if I think back to, that with Graham is nearly 10 years of podcasting.
Wow.
What sort of confidence did Graham and I have when we recorded episode 1? Absolutely zero. It was, and ChatGPT didn't exist back then, so you couldn't ask that. How did I record a podcast?
But you had something better, that confidence, I think. And that's why I think confidence is overrated. You had a desire and an illusion.
Yeah.
And something that made you sparkle. And that's what things I talk about.
Interesting idea and the illusion that we could do it.
Yes, yes. You were excited about it. You were enthusiastic. And one of the topics I cover in the book has to do with letting go of certain preconceptions and embracing all the possibilities that are available and being open-minded about the outcomes that are going to present themselves in life. And I'll give you an example. When I was commenting on LinkedIn recently, actually, on somebody's post, because they were talking about vision boards in that post. And she said, oh, I recommend vision boards because it's a good way to visualize your objectives and create some content. So I wrote, I liked it. And I said, actually, originally, I was very reluctant to do a vision board when it first was presented to me as an idea. But now I can see their value. And she came back and asked, but what made you reluctant and what has it brought you? So I explained, and I will share it with you now and the people who are listening. I was very reluctant because at that point in my life, and also the previous version of me, because I think we all have many versions. We're like version 5.0, 6.0, and all of this. Thought that was a bit airy, flary, and a bit whimsical. A vision board? That is rubbish, right? I would have thought about in the past. But yet over time, I gave in to doing one of these exercises when I was on a course, and I created a collection of photographs of things that inspired me, something I hadn't taken the time to do before. And one of the photographs on that vision board was a map of the world with lots of lines connected to them. And you could see lines from America to Europe and Africa to Asia. I was just inspired by that. So I put it on my vision board. And over time, now, actually, you know me well. I spend about 4 months of the year traveling. How many places have I been to, Kevin, since you and I?
I've lost count, Susanna. A lot.
And my point is, I even have a travel blog, believe it or not, called Suca por el Mundo. And my point is that when I created that vision board, I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even take it seriously. I thought it was a bit of rubbish, but I did it. And here I am living something that is associated with that desire or that piece of inspiration. And I think we all have the ability to connect with what makes us inspired. And I do often work with that when I'm working with people on mentoring. So it doesn't mean that we all have to end up traveling the world for 4 months. But what is very important, I think, in our journey is to understand and connect with the things that do inspire us. Because when we do that, confidence is overrated. You don't care about feeling confident. You're just inspired with following that journey because it's important to you.
I think that illusion word's interesting, because if you knew about all the things that could go wrong and all the problems you're going to have to overcome right at the beginning, you'd probably say no to it. But as
Exactly.
they come along one by one, you do the ChatGPT to find your way through it. You read some blogs or watch some videos on YouTube or find somebody who can help you. And gradually you do overcome those things.
So confidence is overrated.
Yeah. Confidence is probably the end result rather than the beginning, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's the point I'm trying to make, that confidence is not something you can forcefully create out of nothing. It's something that you find in life by connecting with that inner strength that we all have. We all have it. We just need to let it out and take away all the things that are burying it so that it comes out. Because I think many of us I certainly did for many years, we try and collect confidence based on our achievements. I'm a great achiever, and I have one of my speeches, my presentations is called From Doubt to Achievement. So I'm an achiever, but I don't believe that is the way to feel confident. That is one way to pretend that you feel confident when you look great on the outside and you have the big car and the big house and the big job description and all of that. But you could have all of that and still not feel confident and at ease. And in confidence, we are talking here about how you feel about yourself, self-esteem, effectively.
Excuse me for 2 seconds, Susanna. I've got a spaniel here that's barking, getting in the way. So, Cherry, sorry, a little bit of editing to do here.
She wants to meet the unicorn.
He's carrying his unicorn equivalent around in his mouth. He's carrying his fox. Sorry, where were we? Sorry.
Where were we? Let me see. Building confidence on purpose, or
Yeah.
trying to build confidence through our external achievements.
So you're building confidence through your external achievements, so effectively hiding behind a wall. I think we've also said that confidence is the end result. You don't
Yes.
begin with confidence. Is there something that once you've established that confidence, that's almost an indication it's time to move on? You've gone back into your comfort zone. You should be looking for other ways of stepping out of that comfort zone.
I just observe carefully the words you have used there, because you use the word should. When you are confident, you should be looking elsewhere because you're in your comfort zone. And that may well be the case, that when you are confident, you're losing opportunities, I would say, rather than you should do something else. But when I talk about confidence and what that means for me and what I think it's really important, it means feeling at ease and satisfied and accepting of your situation, for instance.
Yep.
So the answer to your question, I think, would be, it depends, because if you are confident and you are feeling at ease, I'll give you the example before I bought the mango farm. I was writing my book and I'm doing my mentoring and I'm doing my traveling, all the things that I'm working about. I am perfectly content with my life. I'm very happy. I'll sign up tomorrow for that life. I like it. I enjoy it. However, I also have ideas and illusions, coming back to that word. And therefore, if opportunities present themselves, I am happy to get out of that comfort zone and go into a new arena, because I think there is growth in there and there's a life to have in that. But I remember well, the few months before we bought the house only a few weeks ago, it was not certain that we would buy it because the house had a tenant that didn't want to leave. So whilst we paid a deposit and everything was signed, if he didn't leave, then we couldn't buy a house. And I was perfectly comfortable with both staying as we are or buying the mango farm. And to me, that's the gem. That point is a gem, is being comfortable with both outcomes and not necessarily thinking, oh, I better get rid of my life because I need to buy the mango farm to get better, to get out of my comfort zone. No, I don't. I'm quite happy with both. And that to me is what real inner confidence is. It's not having to continue to endlessly pursue more endeavors to acquire yet more medals. Because at the end of the day, it could be just another medal, albeit it might sound a little bit more flamboyant or more interesting than just staying, doing my mentoring and my traveling and writing the book. Does that answer your question, Kevin?
It does. So book 3 is probably a mentoring guide for fellow mango farmers.
Who knows? Might be. It might be a recipe book. 100 ways to cook a mango.
That could be interesting. So tell me a little bit more about the process of the book, Susana. This is obviously book 2.
Yes.
Book 1 was probably a bit like starting podcasting. It's kind of,
Yes.
oh, I want to do this, but I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. Let's
Yes.
do it anyway.
Yes.
And you learned a lot. How did the approach to book 2 differ?
I have done many things in a similar way, but I have taken the best parts from my book 1 and then expanded them for book 2. So things that I did for book 1 that I have repeated, I have followed my instincts and wrote and included things that I felt that were important to be discussed on paper. I've also collaborated and been very helpful to have the help of about more than 20, nearly 30 zero readers, people that have been reading the manuscript as I've gone along, and they've given me feedback to change it. What has been different, though, is that last time I wrote the book and then I started taking feedback. And this time, guess what I did? I was very brave because I started with the zero readers when I was on chapter 1. So before I actually wrote the book, and you could say, well, that's confident, isn't it? Engaging with people as zero readers when you don't have a book. But I would say it was just brave of me and hoping for the best that there would be a book at the end of it. So that feedback has been an important part. But the other element that has been different, I think, and will be noticeable for people that read both books, is that this book is more mature, more grown up, more professional. Has 2 storylines that I think we've alluded to, but also I have been more thorough in terms of corrections and going back to the drawing board and listening to the feedback early so that it impacts all of the book. And I think it's a more accomplished piece of work. That's not to say that my first book isn't lovely. It was, but you could tell it was I suppose you could say my first book was a toddler and this one is a teenager. There's still plenty of room for growth, but there certainly has been some growth there.
There's an interesting analogy, though, to look at toddler. And I've got number 4 grandson, who this week as we record this, learned to walk. Learned to walk by falling over a lot of times.
Exactly.
And you look at that learning process, and I really do think going back and looking at kids and how they learn stuff, this concept of confidence doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Just get on and do
it.
And if it doesn't work the first time, they try again, and they try again, and they try again until it happens. And there's just so much to learn in that.
I agree.
That's more mature. Second book, The Teenager. Have you, because you've gained confidence in the process, Susana, has book 2 lost something because of that?
I don't think so, because I have been brave again, not confident. The storyline that covers more of my personal stories is actually very brave. And there are things I share in there. Even some zero readers have said to me, Susana, why are you sharing this? Is this relevant? Why should you tell us this? Do we need to know this? And my response to them was, because if I don't show you the true failures, then I'm being hypocritical.
Yeah.
And to me, it's about sharing my stories so that other people think, yeah, I've been in that situation too. I have felt like that too. And actually, it's not the end of the world. So I think whilst it has gained or lost, it has gained being more professional and therefore potentially lost some of the sparkle, I've brought some new stuff in to compensate. So I'm biased, of course, because I've released my own book. But I think it's a special read. And some people have told me that have read it. And I believe that it's quite unusual in the personal element and very almost like a novel. You're reading a story from beginning to end for 40 years worth of story. And also the part on talking about specific topics with the exercises and giving people practical tools to work with that in their own situation. You'll have to tell me when you read it, Kevin, but I do believe it's quite unique.
So you've been very brave in telling all those stories and really taking that mask of confidence off Susana. You come across to me as a very confident person.
Yes, and that's the point that I do talk about this in the book. Nobody that I know, sane, by the way, somebody in the right frame of mind, feels confident all of the time. I have never met anyone that doesn't have any bouts of self-doubt. We all have that. When you start a new job, when you go to an interview, when something goes wrong, when your boyfriend or girlfriend leaves you, when you divorce, when you don't know what you're talking about and think you're expected to know. Tell me a person in the world of any age, of any gender, or any culture that doesn't feel bouts of doubt sometimes. I don't believe there is one. We all suffer that. So learning to being kind to ourselves through that journey, I think makes all the difference. Because of course, if you're presented with a challenge in your life and you have two choices, to keep walking or to retreat, like the fight or flight, if you accompany yourself well, you will not fly. You will hang on in there and you will not fight. You'll hang on in there and move on. And that will will help you get better outcomes and get to places that you hadn't even thought about. I'm sure, I don't know, 20 years ago, would you have thought you were going to be such a prolific podcast host?
That probably didn't even exist 20 years ago, Susana. So now the book's available. How do people find out more? How do they get hold of the book?
They can just search in Google my name. It's very easy, Susana Serrano Davey, and lots of information about me will come out like the book. They can find it in Amazon, of course, like they can with my first book. And also if they go to my website, which is www.serranodavey.com, in there's a pop-up to find out more. And there's also a section on a little surprise for readers that they can look into.
Brilliant. Susana, can't wait to get my hands on this book. Now, we're recording this a little bit before it's actually published, but yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be a good read.
I look forward to your feedback as well, your honest feedback, which also always helps.
Now, the last book came out in English and in Spanish.
Yes.
Is that the same again?
Yes.
Brilliant.
I can't pick one language. It has to be.
One very last question, because one of the things that's changed most between your two books is the emergence of ChatGPT and AI. How much did you use AI in the creation of the second book?
ChatGPT, I'm very grateful for. And in fact, I'm going to put it on the credits because what it has done, it has made it faster. Because I would write my draft chapter with all my ideas and I would put it into ChatGPT and say, can you help me spot errors, like grammatical errors? And can you also give me your feedback? And it's been great because it has been, in effect, it was my first zero reader was ChatGPT. I would introduce some of the feedback ChatGPT gave me, and then I would give it to the zero readers, the humans who read it. So it has been a fantastic assistant. It has made it faster. And also with the translation, I picked Spanish as my main language, and then I would translate it. So I would just put the chapter, say, can you translate this into English for me? And then I would say, can you please remove literal translations to sound more natural? And then I would review that translation and change things myself to make sure that it stays faithful to the... So I think I have written this book I started seriously in June. So it's finished in 6 months, which is very fast. Last time it took me nearly a year and a half. So I think ChatGPT has sped the process up massively. And since we're talking about this, I'd mention it as well, because my fear, and I think many people will have that fear or that doubt, is that will ChatGPT effectively replace authors? Can ChatGPT do a better job than you can as a writer? And my conclusion has been that no, because the human element, ChatGPT cannot do. It has been great for helping me research, find related content that I can look into to give me what the books say about the topic. But it couldn't possibly tell me my personal stories, or it couldn't tell the reader my personal stories. It couldn't make the emotional connection that I think I do have throughout the book. That whoever reads that book, they will know it's Susana speaking to them, and not a perfect machine. It's too obvious from when you read.
That's interesting. So it's your words, and ChatGPT's helped you make them better, rather than
Exactly.
giving you lots and lots of initial drafts for huge chunks of the book.
No, because it would have no heart. It would be like a library. And I actually tested it with a chapter. I said, well, give me ideas. I want to write a chapter on, I don't know, personal brand. And it would give me a very serious, very well-structured text. But it was, to me, in my view, a very empty, flat text. I want to write something more dimensional than that. And I think there may be people that end up choosing that. But I think the readers will spot it immediately.
So, Susana, I'm excited about this. Thoroughly
So
looking forward to getting hold of the book.
thank you.
For being this week's guest on the GrowCFO show.
My pleasure, Kevin. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to continuing to engage in important topics with you for the GrowCFO community.